the Historic Preservation Commission, and today, the Vice Chair for the Historic Preservation Awards. I'd personally like to thank you all for joining us to recognize and celebrate the unique history of Richmond. Some people may feel that celebrating history is frivolous in light of, all the serious issues of the day. However, like the arts, recognition of history adds to the community. History gives soul to a city. A city that celebrates its history is stronger, more vibrant, and moves forward. It creates a stronger presence in the world. It is more successful. It continues to evolve. History is, in of itself, diversity from the modern. The celebration of history reminds us of where we have been so that we can keep that in mind as we move forward. I would like to introduce to you the Historic Preservation Commission. These people give of their time to make Richmond a better place. They help preserve, establish histories, as well as Richmond's diverse and forgotten places. The commissioners, to begin with, Ms. Joanne Pavlinek, Jonathan Haber. Oops, no, sorry, I don't know where he is. There he is, okay, sorry, Jonathan. I thought he was behind you, but no. Caitlin Hibna, Michael Hibna, and Paul Scolari, there we go. I also would like to thank our wonderful city staff that keeps us running. Soko Monitor, not where she is, and Jonalyn Wales, don't know where she is. They're busy doing something. And of course, the Richmond Planning and Building Department. They all make the Historic Preservation Commission look good. So thank you. Now, I'd like to introduce Joanne Pavlinek, the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Robin. And I want to say Happy National Preservation Month to everybody. This dedicated observance of historic preservation began in the early 1970s when the National Trust for Historic Preservation started it. What began as a week-long observance was expanded to a full month in 2005. In Richmond, the Historic Preservation Commission celebrates this month with this award ceremony. In March, our commission sends out the call for nominations, and commissioners and staff begin to get a lot of questions about the award nominations, eligibility, evaluation criteria. So we thought that you might also be wondering about the award process, the how and the why of this evening's ceremony and celebration. Yes, it's a great way to celebrate National Preservation Month, but our primary goal of the awards is to increase public awareness of Richmond's heritage by recognizing people and places that demonstrate an outstanding commitment to historic preservation and our heritage. So, who is eligible and how do we evaluate the nominations? You might think that an Historic Preservation Award would be limited to an individual or a group who preserve and restore an historic building. But Richmond's eligibility criteria are very broad because there are so many ways to increase public awareness of our heritage. For example, Richmond's previous awards include a theater production, a book, quilts, an oral history, a film, advertisements for a festival, art, graphic design, music tradition, and sculptures. Once the commission receives the nominations, we evaluate them under just 3 criteria, any one of which may be eligible, be enough to qualify. They are involvement, contribution, and/or activities regarding Richmond's historic resources and heritage. We really want to include all those rich stories and activities that tell about our city, what it was, how it became what it is, and help us understand who we are today. The actual award is honorific, and each awardee receives one of these elegant sculptural letter R's, R for Richmond, and of course Richmond's heritage. So on behalf of the Historic Preservation Committee, welcome. Thank you for coming. We're glad you're all here. Please sit back and let's learn about some new stories of people and places that add to our layers of history. You'll be the first to get to appreciate this year's awards. But first, Michael Hibna, our other commissioner, is going to give us a little insight into what other things the Historic Preservation Commission does. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Good evening, everybody. It certainly is nice to see all your faces out here tonight. As mentioned, my name is Michael Hibna, and as a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, I've been asked to say a few words about the HPC and what we do. The HPC consists of 7 volunteer members who either live or work in Richmond, and our job is to identify, register, designate, preserve, protect, enhance, and perpetuate those historic structures, districts, and neighborhoods which contribute to Richmond's cultural heritage. We celebrate these resources for many reasons. To foster civic pride in their beauty and in the accomplishments of those who came before us, to stabilize them, incentivize their preservation, and ensure the economic value of these historic structures, districts, and neighborhoods, to promote and encourage their continued ownership and use, because the worst thing for a historic building is to sit empty and derelict. It needs to be active with people in it. And lastly, by conducting design review for projects that involve historical resources, and to advise and assist the City Council regarding preservation and enhancement of Richmond's historic character and our shared cultural heritage. I joined the HPC in 2016, and as a professional practicing architectural historian and as a Richmond resident, I appreciate this opportunity to add to the Commission's pool of collective expertise. As many of you know, these are challenging times for preservation. As many of you are aware, the current booming real estate market is transforming the region. The development forces that are changing San Francisco, Oakland, and other areas in the East and South Bay will be soon affecting our fair city. We on the HPC do our level best to responsibly accommodate this change, as well as preserve what has been handed down to us. However, to do the best job possible, we do need your help. We provide an opportunity at each of our public meetings for anyone from the public to share with us their concerns, their stories, and any historical information they wish to share with us that can assist us and others in understanding what is important and getting it documented to serve us in the present and for researchers in the future. Context is everything. The more grassroots history we have to draw upon, the more informed our analysis and decisions will be. And it just so happens we currently have a vacancy on the commission. And if you feel, as we do, that Richmond's history is important, valuable, and requires vigilance to keep, please join us in protecting the Richmond we have inherited and shaping the Richmond that future generations will be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Now, Tom Butt, our mayor, our city council liaison, and an avid history proponent.
Thank you, Robin. You know, I think this is my favorite event of the year. It certainly beats the heck out of any city council meeting I've ever been to. And, you know, I want to thank the Historic Preservation Commission and, of course, city staff who work with them for the work you've done over the years. You know, about 20 years ago, we didn't even have a historic preservation program. Rosemary was the mayor, and historic preservation was looked at as an anti-business plot in the city of Richmond. And so we've come a long way. And a lot of that is due to the hard work that both our staff and the Historic Preservation Commission has put in over the last 20 years. And I can tell you that it's brought us statewide recognition. You know, Richmond, in the historic preservation community, we've got a few professionals here, just ask them. Up and down the state, people know about Richmond. They know that, that we have one of the best historic preservation programs in the state of California. And it makes people, it makes them recognize us and understand that. So let's just keep that going. I know along with current members of the commission, we also have a couple of past members here, and I want to thank them also for their work. And you know, like any other commission, you get termed out. You know, you got to get some new people in there. So, like Michael said, we do have one place, and if somebody knows a good prospect, let me know. We'll get them appointed, put them to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Butt. Now, our city manager, Bill Lindsay.
Thanks very much. This for me, it beats the heck out of any city council meeting I've ever been to as well. So something in common there. So at this event 2 years ago, I mentioned that I happened on an article. It was another ever popular top 10 list. And this one caught my eye because it was on the characteristics of cities, and this particular livability blog article ranked the top 10 cities for historical preservation. Now, Richmond didn't make that list, but I think it's well on its way. The article emphasized that old adage, why study history in books when you can walk through it? And Richmond has that great feel for being able to walk through history. This article noted the great potential that historic preservation has in attracting tourists, residents, and businesses. And it commended community leaders in towns all over the nation, like Rosemary, like Tom, and everybody in this room, that are committed to protecting historic buildings, and even to a greater extent, their city's identity. And it remarked on the sense of urgency that these leaders have in keeping their towns from looking and feeling like every other town. History creates a place that is special. And the projects that have been selected for acknowledgement, looking at the list this evening, Alton Construction has been involved in several historic preservation projects in Richmond, and it's certainly fitting that they should be recognized for the building renovation that became their headquarters. Somehow I think that it's fitting that the restored building is an old vitamin factory. You know, it's like that projects like this give the city a shot in the arm and vim and vigor, and it certainly has done just that. I first heard about Melinda McCrary's project to rescue the mural. I was listening to the radio, and I was just minding my own business, and here she was on the radio talking to this reporter, telling the amazing story about her wonderful creativity and intuition and perseverance to save this important piece of history. I think again, it represents the type of viewpoint of the city leaders that we have here today. And it brought to mind that sense of urgency in keeping towns from looking like every other town. And departing from history for the moment, I see just a very bright future for the Richmond Museum of History with the programs that Melinda is bringing. So congratulations. I was also fortunate enough to attend the grand opening of the NYSTROM Elementary School and take a brief tour of the building. And I can't think of another rehabilitation project that's brought to life such an interesting building. And now every time I drive by it, it's a treat. I remember the before and after, which look remarkably similar. And in fact, you almost feel like you're being transported back in time rather than seeing a new building or a new renovated building. You feel like you've gone back 70 years. And to the extent that the quality of a facility can influence learning, and I certainly believe it does, it is very special that this is a school renovation as well. And finally, Sandy Genser-Mack was truly an inspiration to me. I mean that very sincerely. She exemplified every positive message about the nature of community service that one can think of, and I am so fortunate to have known her. So with that, let me offer my congratulations to the recipients of the awards and thank all of you for everything that you do. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bill Lindsay. Now, on to the awards. And first and foremost, I would like Rosemary Corbin to come and give the first award.
Sandy Genser-Mack loved Richmond. And if you knew Sandy, she emphasized she would have said loved Richmond. She grew up in El Cerrito, but she settled in Richmond with her wonderful husband, Lynn, after college. She made it her life's work to promote Richmond, to make it better, and to preserve its rich history. She was a leader in her neighborhood and the Richmond Neighborhood Coordinating Council, where she helped to establish programs which promoted public safety, made new residents feel welcome, and which supplied shoes for children that needed them. But the history of Richmond was her passion, and she was passionate about the things that she cared about. She worked at the Richmond Museum of History, both as a member of the staff and as a volunteer. She and Lynn edited the newsletter of the museum, and as many of you know, she was a terrific editor and proofreader. No grammatical errors ever escaped her notice. All of the organizations she belonged to had perfect minutes. Sandy and I were in the first class of docents at the Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Historical Park, another opportunity to promote Richmond's history. She was a wonderful docent and worked more than was expected of her, and her enthusiasm really lit up the place. When I was mayor and the city was declared a Millennium City by the White House, Sandy helped me with several Millennium projects which featured Richmond's history. The establishment of the Historic Preservation Awards, family histories which were written and submitted by families for the museum collection, and murals painted by neighborhoods and nonprofit organizations. The Historic Preservation Commission, though, which had existed in the 1990s, was allowed to lapse early in the 2000s, but was reestablished in about 2005. Sandy and I both applied and were appointed. I became the chair and she became the vice chair. One of our first actions was to reestablish the Historic Preservation Awards, and she chaired those awards until her death. She was a very valuable member of the commission. She rarely missed a meeting and was very prepared. Her passion for and knowledge of Richmond's history shone through her work, and her editing skills were appreciated in creating commission documents. After 8 years on the commission, Sandy and I were informed that our terms were up. Sandy was not ready to go, and she protested. Some loophole was found, and our terms were magically extended until October 2017. I never understood the ins and outs of that, but anyway, we got another 4 years. At our so-called last meeting, we couldn't resolve an issue and had to postpone it, but our terms were up on Halloween, so we had to postpone that issue until the last week of October. Sandy was late to that meeting, which wasn't like her, and she didn't contribute much to the discussion, which also was not like her. I walked her to her car after the meeting, which took a long time because she had trouble breathing. The next morning, she entered the hospital, and you know the rest of the sad story. Sandy had dragged herself to her last commission meeting. Her dedication to the commission and its work was greater than anyone could ever have expected. Her long commitment to furthering the understanding and preservation of Richmond's history make her a very worthy recipient of the Historical Preservation Award. I just wish we could have done it sooner. And now, I guess, accepting the award is Lynn Mack, her wonderful husband. On behalf of the commission, we give it to you with wonderful memories and love for Sandy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to say something?
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and our city manager, everybody who's gone before me here. This is quite an honor for Sandy, and I'm honored to accept this award for her. Richmond's history was indeed her passion, and this very event was her baby, and she just loved doing it, and getting all of the candidates in order and evaluating them all, and then presenting the awards. She loved this, and she loved the organization. As Rosemary said, first it was the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee, which later became the commission, and she would have loved this. With me today is Sandy's mother, Clara Ray Genser, who at 99 and a half years old has seen and been much of Richmond's history. And Sandy's brother, Joshua Genser, and his wife Elena. And together, we accept this award. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, for our next award, Ms. Joanne Pavlinek will be presenting it.
There we go. Okay, so the next award is to Alton Construction, Inc. for adaptive reuse of the historic National Oil Products Company vitamin factory to Alton Construction's headquarters. So, a successful adaptive reuse has many components. First, the historic architecture must be appreciated for a start. Second, there must be an understanding of the building's character-defining features. Third, the reuse design must combine stewardship of the resource with imagination in order to both expose its historical architectural essence and meet the needs of the new user. And finally, sustainable strategies must be incorporated for the long term. This adaptive reuse does all of these. Let me unravel it for you. The historic resource is a 70-plus-year-old building located in the Kaiser Shipyards Historic District of Richmond's Marina Bay neighborhood, right on Marina Bay South. Bob Alton, president of Alton Construction, says, "We drove by and fell in love with it." As you observe the before pictures, let's go to the, okay, there's one before picture. Let's go to a couple more. So as you look at these before pictures, you may wonder about this statement. Adaptive reuse potential takes vision, and Bob Alton had that vision. He saw the handsome modern structure was a gem that lay under decades of neglect and decay, and then discovered that it would also meet the company's space needs. The reused, renovated building contains private offices, an open office area, conference rooms, kitchen and tap room, bid room, and storage areas. First, a little on the building's history. It's an industrial building built just after World War II by National Oil Products, a nutritional manufacturer of a variety of vitamins. In the 1940s, the Richmond Chamber of Commerce described this vitamin company as the largest, the latest, and the most modern vitamin production plant in the United States. The importance of good nutrition was a frequent message in educational campaigns during the war and was stressed in home front posters and slogans. The government was purchasing large quantities of vitamin A made from fish liver oils. The oils may have been manufactured from byproducts of Richmond's processing plants at Point San Pablo. This modern industrial factory is unique in that it has some interesting architectural features that most more utilitarian industrial buildings lack. Catch the prominent entry feature. Let's go back, wrong way. Okay, so before it's covered with landscaping, now it's, the landscaping is taken away. It clearly articulates the entry with its projecting fins and open portholes that are most likely a nod to Richmond's shipyards. Also note the 5 roof monitors. These are 5 raised roof areas with vertical windows that flooded the factory with natural light. These 2 features, the entry and the roof monitors, along with their historic steel windows, are my favorite outstanding features of the building. So, what was necessary to uncover this gem? Of course, the brick was cleaned, the flaking paint on the interior wood ceilings was removed, and the natural wood was exposed. But the most impressive story is the restoration of the historic steel windows on the building facade and the roof monitors. More than 200 steel windows were restored, each with 12 panes of glazing. They were each carefully removed, transported to a local refinishing facility where they were powder coated, reglazed, then brought back and reinstalled. On top of a sensitive and creative historic rehabilitation, the project incorporates energy-efficient greening strategies, including the window glazing replacement, energy-efficient electrical, mechanical, and plumbing upgrades, and drought-tolerant landscaping. And as you can see in these photos, the adaptive design also incorporates use of the natural light provided by the roof monitors into the new interior design. A perfectly rehabilitated historic resource still has to compete with low-energy building operating costs of slick new construction. So greening our historic resources is essential for the long-term success of a rehabilitation. Bob Alton's search for a relocation for Alton Construction took 7 years. Wow, 7 years. Kind of makes you think we could use a Match.com for vacant historic resources. Regardless, Richmond is fortunate Bob Alton drove by the vitamin factory and fell in love with it. This adaptive reuse demonstrates that the best way to preserve our heritage buildings is through a successful marriage of a sympathetic new use with a sensitive, creative, and sustainable architectural design. So on behalf of Richmond's Historic Preservation Commission, I congratulate Bob and Shannon Alton and Alton Construction for this exceptional adaptive reuse. Bob and Shannon will be accepting the award for Alton Construction. Thank you. Say a few words. Oh, there's a few more pictures. Let me go through those. Interior shots, and then another, a new flag installed with an inscription on the base. I think that's it. Thank you.
Well, we weren't prepared to say anything, so we'll do our best. But first of all, I want to thank the mayor and thank everybody for reaching out. And Andrew suggested that we put the building up, and Andrew went with Interactive Resources. We reached out to Andrew, and his only decision he made was a tap room, and everything else Shannon and I did. So if you know Andrew. No, it was funny though, the cost, it does come down to cost sometimes, and the steel windows I was looking at, I said, oh, we got to do the, aluminum windows, and Andrew called me up one night, he goes, Bob, I just kind of, I really need to talk you out of those windows. We got to do the steel windows, and yeah, and we did it over at the Riggers Loft, and it was really difficult to deal with those windows, and they're broken down, and we tried to do the powder coating, and it was just cost prohibitive. But actually, we used a company that's right behind. It's in Richmond, which was actually kind of neat. Our neighbor, and it's and you know what? That really made it. So we got to kudos to Andrew to talking us in to do the right thing. But it was really a fun project. We love it there. We love being over there. Everybody in the company loves it, and thank you for giving us this award. Appreciate it.
Come by and see me here.
Thank you. And our next presenter is Jonathan Hamer.
So those of us who are interested in history are probably quite aware of its ability to bring people together. The Preservation Award winner that I have the honor of introducing tonight not only recognizes the powerful force for good that history holds, but she also understands its important role in social justice, civic pride, and economic development. Since the beginning of this school year, the Richmond Museum of History has hosted more than 700 students. It's recently held exhibits on everything from the Black Panther Party to Chinese shrimping villages to the Jewish communities of Richmond and Contra Costa County. I remember reading about the rescue of Richmond's Victor Arnautoff mural from the basement of the downtown post office, and I wondered who was behind the salvage of one of the city's priceless historical treasures. This award winner sees her work as a, quote, labor of love. And we in Richmond are thankful for her tireless work that sometimes goes thankless. That is why I'm proud and honored to be presenting this 2018 Historic Preservation Award to Melinda McCrary for her role in preserving a priceless mural and honoring our city for its diverse and sometimes difficult past.
Thank you so much for having me today. So I'm so glad to be here, and I am just delighted to accept this award on behalf of the Richmond Museum of History. I want to thank a few people in the room. First of all, my board, John Z., who is a longtime member of the Richmond Museum Association board, and of course, Sandy. May her memory always be a blessing. And my volunteers, Oliver and Ellen, who actually nominated me for the award. Thank you so much, Ellen, and Julie, who's also not in the room. But as you all know, local history is important because it establishes that wonderful things, extraordinary things have taken place right here in your own town, and it inspires people to do the same in their own life. And I am going to continue my work to reinvigorate the museum and also renovate the mural. of which I would love to have a donation from each and every one of you in the room, because if we're ever going to see it on the wall, we're going to need to raise some money for that. But thank you also to the post office, because they gave me the loan for this wonderful object. So I'm also going to leave you by reminding you that the Richmond Museum is still a growing organization, and it's also going to be a significant booster to the local economy. So all of the investment from the city and our partners is going to come back to our local economy tenfold. So I want to thank you all. Thank you, Jonathan. And I hope to see you at 400 Nevin Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, the next presenter, Caitlin Hibna.
There's a lot of stuff up here. All right. There's more Richmond history stuff. All right. It is my pleasure to introduce our next award recipient, a project that has utilized a variety of preservation approaches to achieve not only the physical rehabilitation of an important historic resource, but due recognition of its historic significance. NYSTROM Elementary School is located on Harbor Way South between Florida and Virginia Avenues, just north of Cutting and the 580. And if you've driven past in the last year or so, I'm sure you've noticed the fresh, white, modern facade that's now presenting itself to the street. It's sleek, it's eye-catching, and it's a true monument to Richmond's World War II era history. Like so much of Richmond, NYSTROM School was the product of wartime growth and exponential population boom. While the shipyards dominated the scene in Richmond, countless other facilities were critical to making the home front function efficiently. Shipyards needed workers, and workers often came with families and children. NYSTROM School was built in 1943 by the Kaiser Company for the U.S. Maritime Commission to accommodate the influx of youngsters in Richmond. It represents a significant example of the federal government providing financial assistance to support local needs during the war. And it's one component of Kaiser's lauded role in providing for the welfare of its workers and their families. Testament to Richmond's flurry of activity during the war was the fact that at its peak, NYSTROM School ran 72 classes with multiple sessions throughout the day in order to accommodate about 3,000 students taught by 60 teachers. By the turn of the 21st century, however, the school had become obsolete and was showing its age. The recent renovation of NYSTROM's 75-year-old bones, which were originally designed by well-known Bay Area architect Will G. Corlett, was undertaken by the West Contra Costa Unified School District using the architectural and historical services of Interactive Resources based in Point Richmond. Exercising good preservation practice, the project was designed to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, which include 10 standards and rigorous guidance for the appropriate treatment of historic fabric when undertaking a project. The work included the modernization and rehabilitation of the 48,000 square foot, two-story classroom and administration building, and the construction of a new 14,000 square foot multi-purpose building and community center, which is compatible with the existing historic main building. Improvements to the surrounding campus ground fleshed out a fully realized rehabilitation effort. The exterior and significant interior components of the main building were kept intact, and existing siding, trim, decorative features, fenestration, and even paint colors are original to the building or were replaced in kind to meet the standards. Historically appropriate, the project was also sustainable, and among other strategies, reused over 75% of the original redwood siding as well as other materials. In addition to the sprucing and spiffing of the NYSTROM campus itself, Interactive Resources undertook historic designation of the property, successfully nominating it for the National Register of Historic Places, in which it was formally listed in October of last year. And you can find the very thorough documentation online with the California State Parks and NPS, and I definitely recommend you give it a read. It's very interesting. National Register designation means that NYSTROM School is also listed on the California Register of Historical Resources and on our own Richmond Register. Obviously, there is great honor in National Register recognition or designation, but it also affords assurance of adequate environmental review in the future and national visibility, appreciation, and interest of our important local history. NYSTROM School opened for use in the spring semester of 2017 and should be wrapping up its academic year right about now, I think. I do hope its students, which only number 500 these days, have enjoyed their school environs and have developed appreciation for the rich architectural and historical context in which they are learning. For this well-orchestrated preservation effort, I present a Richmond Preservation Award for the rehab and historic designation of NYSTROM School to Diane Hedler, I believe. Congratulations. You're welcome.
On behalf of Rosie the Riveter Trust, I want to thank you for this award. We really appreciate it. And now we have a neighbor next door to our Maritime Child Care Center that is also on the Historic Registry. So thank you very much. And I want to introduce Tom Leatherman now to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Leatherman, the superintendent at Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Historical Park. And it's an honor to have worked with the school district to look at this building and talk about its historic preservation. For many of you may or may not know that we, when the national park was established here, we don't own any of the sites of the park that were named in the legislation, but we work with partners around the community to help preserve and tell the story. And in the general management plan that was completed a few years ago, there was a process that we established so that we could potentially designate other sites in the city as part of the national park. And one of the things that's required as part of that process is to be added to the National Register of Historic Places. So I am proud to say that although we haven't finished all the paperwork, we will be adding NYSTROM Elementary School to the park. So it will be another designated site of the park. And that, again, is made possible by the school district following the Secretary's standards and by the work of the school district and interactive resources to bring it to the historic character that it was built in. So we're very happy to add another site to Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Historical Park. So I also have the honor to give the next award, and it's really a testament to the integration of the national park in the city and the work that's been done for so many years since it was established in 2000. For those that don't know, the Homefront Award is given to individuals and organizations whose efforts and support greatly advance the understanding and appreciation of the values that led to the formation and development of Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Historical Park. This year, it is my privilege to recognize City Manager Bill Lindsay with the award. This is a funny picture, but you'll see in a second. I've been working at the park here for almost 10 years now, and during this time, the park has gone from a concept to a reality in so many ways. I've watched the partnerships around the park grow to support a greater understanding of the Homefront and the value of the park to the community, and all along the way, Bill has helped to make it happen. So let's take a little walk down memory lane. As some of you might remember, the park had a hard time finding a home at first. Initially, we were in the San Francisco regional office, and then for a time shared an office with County Supervisor John Joya. But in 2004, the city came to the rescue and offered us a space in the temporary city office space on Marina Way South, while the Civic Center was being renovated. We were there for a few years until they finished the rehabilitation, at which time there wasn't room for us in the Civic Center. So we moved into this building at 2566 McDonald Avenue, right across the street. And we were there for a few years, and then Bill came to me and said, well, we had a few changes, what was happening, and there were a few less city staff available, so there was more room in the Civic Center. And Bill came to me and he said, we'd love for you to move out of that building and move into the Civic Center and occupy this space. And the Civic Center are actually on the 3rd floor of this building, for those that don't know. And then he also said, and we'd like you to pay some money for it. Because we had been freeloading up until that point. We actually hadn't been paying the city anything. We were just there at the grace of the city. So we agreed to that, and it's been a great relationship all along. And during all this time, I mean, this is just our move that I described. During all this time, we had all these things going on. So here we are in the Civic Center. We had things like the whirly crane that were being moved. We had the memorial that was actually constructed before the park, but there were a number of things, improvements that were made at Marina Bay Park as well. We did dedications. Here's a dedication at MLK Park that we're all part of the work that was being done to help recognize the history and recognize the work, not only the home front work, but the work and the history around the city. And the park was all part of that, and I think largely because Bill helped to make it part of that. And whether it was development at Shipyard 3, or whether it was helping with the lease arrangements for the visitor center, and those who don't know, I'm not going to go into the details, but they were long and protracted. Or whether it was the rehabilitation of the historic Riggers Loft, or dozens of other projects along the way, including the opening of the Rose of the River Visitor Center in 2012, Bill was always there to take the ideas and turn them into reality. When it comes to making it happen, I cannot think of a more deserving and dedicated supporter than Bill. So if Bill could come to the podium, for the significant role you have played in establishing and helping to make Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Historical Park flourish in the city of Richmond, it is my pleasure to present you with the 2018 Historic Preservation Award.
Well, thanks very much for this award. It really is very meaningful. I think that if nothing else, it shows that nobody does anything by themselves, because it just so many hands that make it work. And I feel like maybe I just crashed a few pictures up there, but it was nice to see the memories. One thing that I will tell you that is sort of interesting is that after I accepted the job to be city manager in Richmond, but before I actually started work, I got a call from Judy Hart, who was the then park superintendent, I guess the first park superintendent for the Rosie the Riveter National Historic World War II, I can't get all the words right, but anyway. And she said, I need to give you a tour. And so she gave me a tour. It included the Maritime Center and NYSTROM Elementary, and drove around to the different places that, the sort of ghosts of the past, and the port, and the old whirly crane, and things like that, and took me to the Rosie Memorial. And I was really hooked on Richmond. And I don't know if she even realizes, I think I've told her that she planted this historic seed in me at that point, before I even started work, that I was never going to let go of, and I held tight to Richmond's history ever since. So when it comes to having the National Park Service in the Civic Center, it's our privilege. And I'm glad things like that worked out. There's so many things that worked out just wonderfully. How things just fall into place sometimes. And one other thing I'll say about Tom has been a great partner. The National Park Service has been terrific. And even though I went to Tom and I said, we'd like to have you in the Civic Center, and you need to start paying rent. I'll have, Tom's creativity was, well, if we lease the building, we'll have to go through the General Services Administration. It'll take like 7, maybe 8 years to get that approved. So how about if we just do a service agreement? So the National Park Service is here because they provide service to the city, and we provide service to them. And so they're not really here on a lease. They're here because of cooperation. And I can't think of a better way to have a partnership with such a great organization. So thank you again. Yeah, you've heard from me before, so I'll try to stop here. Besides, I contributed $25 to the reception. And I plan to have my share. I was telling John a little earlier that. So thanks again for being here. Thanks for this great award. It truly is an honor. Thanks.
Well, thank you all for coming today. I wanted to specifically thank all the commissioners, the awardees, Tom Butt, Bill Lindsay, KRCT, Richmond Arts Center, Contra Costa College Culinary Department, Sign Pro, Ellen, for her wonderful photography. I want to thank all of you today for celebrating Richmond history. Please join us and Rick Ambrose, the director of the Art Center, across the plaza at Richmond Art Center for a reception. And commissioners, if you could stay here. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so do you want the award winners to stay here? Okay. And award winners too. So, commissioners, yes, award winners, former commissioners, you're stuck. Everybody else, enjoy. Sorry, Bill, you're not getting your money yet.